Hey video game fans, I'm Push Dustin, and this is Memory Card. Ben is off for the week, and I thought I'd bring in someone with a little bit more class. Someone who actually has a degree, and has a fiery hot research abilities of a smoldering volcano. I'm speaking, of course, of the one and only Dr. Lava. Dr. Lava has been researching into cut content in Nintendo games for several years now. He is especially known for documenting Pokemon information. How are things today, Mr. Lava?
Good. How you doing, Push?
I'm doing all right. It's the new year. It's the 2020. New things are happening. Keeping busy. How about you?
I'm doing all right. Actually, I'm spending an entire month with my in-laws, so that's been a great way to enjoy the holidays.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get ready for this episode. So let's boot it up. My first question is, how did you get started with doing Dr. Lava cut content?
Well, I actually came up with the Dr. Lava character a few years before I got into cut content. Basically, me and a friend of mine wanted to start a new YouTube channel. I've had some old YouTube channels in the past, and we were looking for kind of like on-screen representations of our voices.
Yep.
And we're just kind of looking around online while we were drunk, actually, and we stumbled across some American Girl dolls in wheelchairs.
Yep.
And we just thought that was bizarre and hilarious. So we came up with the idea that he was British, so he would be an evil scientist in a wheelchair, and I would be like a disgruntled Vietnam vet, kind of like Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July. I don't know if you've seen, or maybe you're familiar with the parody as a Charlie on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know Charlie from It's Always Sunny.
So I was going to be basically that guy, but then we ended up moving to different cities, and so I took over the evil scientist role, and then I tried to make a cartoon based around Dr. Lava for a while, but it ended up kind of failing spectacularly, and then I won't bore you with too many of the details. Eventually I ended up covering Nintendo cut content, and then people only really seemed to be interested when I talked about the Pokemon stuff. So I guess a little over a year ago, I went to just kind of focusing on Pokemon full time as the niche, and it's gone pretty well.
How many years have you done cut content in particular?
It's just about a year and a half now. I think the first one I did was Metroid Prime on GameCube, and then I did various Nintendo games, and then it was I guess about 15 months ago, I did Pokemon Red and Blue, which got a lot more, views and attention than the other games I'd done. So I said, well, I'll do one more Pokemon game, and then I did one more, and then I just kind of ended up sticking with it.
Yeah, you kind of found your audience. So, what has been the most surprising piece of cut content that you've uncovered?
Well, a lot of the stuff I talk about, I often get credited for more than I've actually discovered, because I tend to talk about cut content and delve into stuff, but a lot of it is stuff that was discovered like in that Space World leak, Gold and Silver's 1997 demo.
Yeah.
Which I talk a lot about, and I write articles about it and stuff like that, although I had nothing to do with the leak myself. But it's most of the stuff I've done, which is actually something you helped me with, because you're out there in Japan, and I was trying to get my hand on some Japanese magazines, and you had been kind enough to get those Japanese magazines for me and mail them to me, or scan them for me.
Yep.
And so I could get those translated. So most of the stuff I've done, which I can really take credit for, has been commissioning translations of these old Japanese magazines where people like Ken Sugimori, the lead art director for the Pokemon series, talk about the origins of Pokemon designs, Pokemon ideas that were scrapped, and that kind of thing. So I think probably my favorite example that I guess I could take credit for was there was a particular origin story from a 2011 Nintendo Dream magazine where he's talking about how the Hydreigon family were tank dragons, and then they'd thrown the designs out, but then Masuda or someone else higher up had ordered them to deliver a 3-stage dragon family. So they revived the designs. They had Hydreigon as a Yamada no Orochi motif, which is probably something you know more about than I do. Basically, an 8-headed Hydra from Japanese mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up cutting it down to just 3 heads, but those older designs of the tanks and 8-headed dragons still are reflected in the final designs, where Hydreigon and his pre-evolution still have purple tread marks on their bellies, which are leftovers from the tanks. And then Hydreigon's silhouette still looks like actually a 9-headed dragon, as Sugimori puts it, one better than Orochi. But yeah, it's just fun to go through all those old magazines, and I'll send it off to the translator, kind of cross my fingers that something good comes back. Sometimes it's a dud, and I've just spent all this time and maybe a couple $100 on these old magazines getting them translated. But other times something really interesting will come through, and it's a real thrill when something good shows up in my inbox from the translator.
Yeah, I definitely understand how that feels. With Smash Brothers, I spent a couple years just researching and deep diving into various articles and stuff like that, trying to see what hasn't been translated. And it was exactly as you described. There's some times where it's just like there's nothing, but other times you'd find this one article and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know about this thing before. Right.
I first came to be familiar with you and your work from sourcegaming.com, which I listened to your podcast. In fact, probably everyone says this, but yours is the only podcast I listen to, Push.
Oh, thank you.
But actually, it's true. And I don't think I've ever even heard you mention, I haven't listened to every episode, but I haven't heard you mention Source Gaming or really your past all of that. But that's how I first came to be familiar with your work.
Yeah, I think I actually ran into you first when you published an article on Smash Bros.
I think the first time that we crossed paths was I published an article on my website where I basically said something like, I've never started drama before, but this is just ridiculous. All these websites are just copy pasting all these translations I've done. And, they're getting all the, ad revenue and all the street cred. And I'm this tiny website with like a few hundred Twitter followers at the time.
Yeah.
And they're drinking my milkshake basically. And I was pissed off, and I was, had like a few hundred Twitter followers, and I was hoping someone would signal boost it, and you kind of showed up and were like, I've had that same problem too. You can screw those guys. And I appreciated that. And I think that was the first time that we crossed paths.
Yeah. But you really found your audience like this year, because you've grown massively in the last, I think, last 12 months.
Yeah, really the last 6 months or so. But especially since I started focusing on Pokemon and trying to these kind of translation projects, especially. But it's just been the last 6 months or so that I've I don't want to say blown up, but that I've the follower rate has increased a lot in the last 6 months or so.
I was going to say it's also been an exciting time for Pokemon information, because we've had a lot of demos and concepts leak.
Right. Because originally the reason I got into cut content of old Nintendo game, I used to be in the drone business.
Yeah.
And I just realized like how fast things were moving. And so when I started doing these old cut content videos, I thought, okay, this is the kind of stuff that will be just as relevant 10 years from now as it is today, because it's already irrelevant in a way. It's stuff about things that did not happen in 20-year-old games. But then, it's been really wild the last year or so. Game Freak has published some stuff officially. There's been a whole bunch of leaks, mostly to do with stuff from the first 2 generations of Pokemon games. And so it's like I'll put out this video about cut content, and then 6 months later it'll be all this new stuff will come out, and my video about a 20-year-old game somehow is outdated now.
Yep.
It's been wild. Good time to be in the Pokemon beta content business.
Yeah, definitely. So I was wondering, could you discuss how the Space World leak happened, or how that came about?
That has actually just kind of gone public in the last, it was December 19th, I think it was, or a few days after. So there was a leak of Gen 4 beta sprites on December 19th. So basically what had happened was there was a guy who his internet handle is Wacko, and he hacked into Nintendo servers in March of 2018, and he got a whole bunch of stuff. Most relevant for the purpose of this conversation was a whole bunch of Pokemon prototype assets, and including that Space World 1997 demo, as well as the stuff from Red and Green, which leaked, published by Helix Chamber in February 2019, and then the more recent Gen 4 beta sprites. So basically, this guy hacked into Nintendo, got caught, but by then, he already had the stuff and had given it away to some folks, or some of it. And there's some court records and there's some news stories about the trial for him, hacking into Nintendo servers. But essentially, it's now been made public that was the source of the leak. Some people thought it was like an insider,
like a prototype.
Yeah, some people thought it was some Nintendo or Game Freak insider or some collector who'd had it in a safe and decided to make it public. But now it's been revealed it was from a hack of Nintendo servers.
Yeah, I initially thought it was a collector who had the Space World demo.
That was kind of the people who were for a while trying to sort of cover up, trying to protect that hacker, basically, because he's still somewhat at risk of further damages legally. So they didn't want to just say, oh, it's this guy. The sort of official narrative for a lot of the people who knew who it was just said, oh, it's some anonymous, mysterious collector, and don't ask too many questions about who.
So why did information about the hack actually become public?
The friend, this guy, there's another guy who, he was the one who posted I guess you would say confession. I hope he wouldn't mind my characterizing it that way, but he did say sorry and fess up and all that. So I don't think that's a mischaracterization. So Wacko, the hacker, his alias, is friends with another guy who goes by the alias Ganix. Actually, this person told me, I did talk to Ganix, said he prefers they, them pronouns. I'll try to adhere to that without making it confusing. So Ganix posted on Glitch City Laboratories forums, which is basically kind of like a Pokemon glitch and prototype community website, basically telling the story that Wacko had done the hack. He'd given some of these assets, these stolen, hacked assets, to Ganix. He'd given them to Helix Chamber. And as far as the Gen 1 stuff, the Gen 2 stuff, the Space World, basically there was a PRET, I don't know if you pronounce that or spell it out, but there's a PRET Discord server where kind of Pokemon prototype enthusiasts hang out.
Okay.
So Wacko, the hacker, created a screen name that was basically, it was 3 underscores, I think, just, anonymous, and just dropped them off in the Discord anonymously and said, like, oh, I hear you guys like prototypes. Dropped them off, and with a download limit of 20, so 20 people could download it.
Yeah.
And then he turned around and logged into his regular account, his regular Discord account, and him and the other guy who was aware of what was going on, Ganix, the one who made the confession, told this story last week. They downloaded it. They were among those 20 people who downloaded it. And like, oh, wow, someone dropped this off. When, of course, they knew who dropped it off. It was them, essentially. And then Team Space World formed, which is basically 20 of these people who happened to be on that Discord and got the 20 downloads. And then some other people were pulled in.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's how it happened. The rest from there was those kind of prototype enthusiasts that picked it apart and, published what was inside.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see the Gen 4 beta sprite leak just last month.
Yeah, they were not as exciting as Space World, and there's no lost Pokemon, but there were, a few hundred kind of scrapped gender differences.
Yeah.
A lot of them, to be honest, were kind of boring, but some of them are really interesting, like Pikachu, Raichu, Wobbuffet. Is it Chimicho? I often mispronounce Pokemon names, but there's...
Chimecho?
Chimecho? That's probably right. I get comments in my YouTube videos every single day saying, like, oh, you mispronounced this, you mispronounced that Pokemon. I only have, 10 Pokemon videos. There's one video I get the same comment every day. I think it's supposed to be Plusle.
Oh, I always get that one wrong.
In Minion or Minune, Minune, I guess. And I'd said...
It's a Minion.
Minion, right. I think I'd said, like, Plusle and Minion, and every day I get comments just like, it's Plusle and and Minun or whatever it is, it's text.
Yeah.
I guess it's a play on plus and minus. I never got that, and I now watch the anime before every episode, before each recording, so I can not mispronounce anything. But that was one that I missed, and when I got to that part of the script, I was recording it. Crap! I'll just take a shot at it. Here comes the sentence: Plusel and Minun, and I've not heard the end of it.
You're doing Galaxy Brain and just driving more engagement to your videos.
I'd considered that because the more comments I get. The more the algorithm likes it. So I was thinking, actually, it's maybe like a good business move to mispronounce Pokemon names. But
yeah, just include one obvious mispronunciation or a fact that is wrong, and you'll get everyone commented on the video.
I think that's actually probably a good idea. I'm going to try to avoid it, but I really, as much as I try to avoid it, I end up doing it. So I guess it's probably for the best.
Hey folks, we're putting this episode on pause for a moment to reveal how you can help Memory Card. If you're enjoying the show and you'd like to support our gaming history endeavors, you should consider pledging $1 or $2 to our Patreon.
For a single $1 a month, you'll receive special updates and be given the option of ad-free episodes. You won't have to hear this ad, the one that you're currently listening to, ever again. For $2 a month, you'll become an official member of Club 251, which gives listeners access to exclusive bonus content and detailed transcripts via our Memory Card website.
Every little bit pledged helps us improve the show and grow Memory Card into something even more wonderful. Find out more on the support section of our website or at patreon.com/memcard. That's patreon.com/MEMCARD. And now, back to the show.
What was your favorite cut content? What's your favorite, cut Pokemon?
Well, everyone likes Katora and Raitora, those electric tigers that were cut from both generations 1 and 2. So I won't say that. It's a bit like saying Pikachu is your favorite Pokemon. It's too obvious. I really like Akari, which was the middle stage of a 3-stage family cut from Gen 2 that was in the Space World demo. Mm-hmm. He's a shark with an anchor for a tail.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that one.
And there's the girl who did all the art for the Space World sprites, kind of recreations. You've probably seen it. Mm-hmm. Racy Beep is her online handle, Rachel Briggs. She told me a theory. She got it from someone else, but I usually don't spread fan theories because I think they're just kind of full of hot air. But this one I actually think has some merit to it, mm-hmm. having to do with Akari, which is in the final build of Gold and Silver. There's a location called the Lake of Rage. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you speak Japanese, so you could share your thoughts on this.
Okay.
I think the Japanese, I should say translation because it's the original, but the Japanese for Lake of Rage is something like Akari Nomazu. Nozomo, yeah, something like that. But the important part is that it's Akari.
Yeah. For
Lake of Rage. Akari is Rage, and the Pokemon was named Akari. So probably it was meant to be that the Lake of Rage was supposed to be a reference to Akari, the scrapped shark Pokemon, rather than in the final build, it's got that red Gyarados. The lake is kind of all about him.
Okay. I was going to say, actually, one of my favorites is Rinrin.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I love cats. I've got 3, but I try not to just be like, I love the cute ones.
Well, I forgot the name of it, but the doll, is it Chinese style doll?
That's a good one too. Yeah, he's Chinese style straw doll.
Yeah,
Norawara. I think I'm pronouncing that probably wrong. And then he evolves into a Jiangshi panda, which is like a Chinese style vampire, the hopping vampire.
That one's also really cool. Yeah, I wish they would bring it back.
Probably got cut for being, creepy, occult little straw dolls with pins being pushed through them. Mm-hmm. So that's really not surprising they got cut, but they're really good ones.
I was watching through all your videos before doing this interview, and Game Freak seems to have cut a lot of events. Just in every generation, it was just like, yep, this event was cut, this item was never passed out. Why do you think that is?
There was one in Gen 2 that was only available via a Japanese-only online service where you'd hook up your Game Boy to a cell phone adapter to get basically DLC to get Celebi. Gen 3 had a a key item only distributed at Japanese special events to go to a faraway island to catch Mew. Gen 4 had a special event kind of hidden in the internal data because Game Freak decided not to hand out the key item, not to distribute it, because Junichi Masuda said they thought it would be too confusing for players, which is a reasoning no one really believes. There's different theories on what the real reason would be, but and then Gen 5 they had a similar one where that one actually was really confusing, the lock capsule. I don't know if you've seen that video that I've done, but
I saw that.
It's really complicated. It connects Gen 4, it connects Heart Gold Soul Silver with Black and White, and it's really complicated. Even if you had a guide, it'd be pretty complicated, and the payoff is just a TM. It's not even very good.
Yep.
So I kind of see why they didn't implement that one, although it's still strange that they would go to all the trouble of creating this intergenerational event only to, once it's finished, to think like, oh, let's just not even distribute the key that unlocks it. It's just kind of dumb. It's like, well, wouldn't you have realized that earlier in the development process? But I apparently not.
So do you think like Game Freak just kept on hoping that they would be able to do these events, and they just ended up not being able to do them internationally because it's just impossible to do in every country kind of thing?
I think it's kind of a different case with each one. Like the whole thing with the Celebi event in Gen 2, which is, I guess, if cell phone use was, I guess at the time Japan was way ahead of the West and the United States as far as how many people had access to cell phones.
Yeah.
I really don't know why they wouldn't distribute the old C map that unlocked the island in Gen 3. Back then, the games were released in the U.S. like maybe a year or so after they came out in Japan. And so I've heard some people say that by the time they could have brought those special event items to the West, it was already too soon to the next games being released. And so it would have been kind of goofy to be promoting games that you're about to replace, essentially. Which that could be the reason. That's one theory that could hold water. But now that games will release simultaneously worldwide, that wouldn't be an issue. But they don't really release kind of events the way they used to, where like a new location is unlocked that has some legendary Pokemon. Now you just basically download via Wi-Fi and pick up a Pokemon in the Pokemon Center. So it's unfortunately they don't do it the way they used to do it.
Yeah, they had I think with Let's Go, I think you could get like a Chansey from the Pokemon stores if it was your birthday. That's a thing, right?
Oh, I haven't actually heard of that one. I got Let's Go. I played a bit, and then I just kind of put it down after I'd beaten it.
Last time I went to the Pokemon store in Kyoto, I remember seeing a sign that's like, you can get a Chansey if it's your birthday. So I think that was with Let's Go.
That's probably right. I don't pay too close attention to the events where it's just something you could just kind of get anywhere else in the game, like a Chansey. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like anything too special.
Right.
But I think, maybe they're trying to move away from events like that because of the international audience.
There's been some really good Japan exclusive ones over the years. Like in Gen 5, they had some. I mean, I think they've had these all over the years, but specifically in Gen 5, they had some like that would connect, or at least lore-wise connected to games like Pokemon Conquest, which is a kind of a spin-off game. You could get like a shiny Rayquaza. It's like a black one that's meant to belong to kind of like the villain from those games. And there's a lot of, even though it would be a Pokemon you could normally get in the game, as hard as it would be to get a shiny, you could still get it. But, it has this unique thing that it's tied to the other side games and all that. It would have been nice if they brought that stuff to the West.
Are there any games that you'd like to explore more in the future?
Well, I love a lot of the Nintendo library. My last video was about Luigi's Mansion, and ended up getting like after having covered Pokemon for last year, my Luigi's Mansion video only got, according to YouTube analytics, my viewership fell 86%. With once I broke away from just doing Pokemon. And so I think at this point I'm just going to stick with Pokemon because no one really wants to hear me talk about anything else. But I do, I used to do Zelda and Metroid videos, some stuff from the Mario series, and I love all those games. But I think as far as the Dr. Lava's concerned, I'll be sticking with Pokemon because it's a pretty good niche to be in.
I definitely know that feeling with Source Gaming. It was like anytime that we did anything not Smash, it like had a third of the viewership or even less sometimes.
Right, yeah, I think I remember I put up that Luigi's Mansion video. It took me like a month to make it. And I was like, oh man, this is like technically and narratively and all that, like this is maybe the best video I've ever made. Like this is like really proud of this video. I put it online, it got like, whereas usually in the first hour it would get, you know, 1,000, a couple thousand views, and I've gotten like a few hundred, and I started losing subscribers.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no. Like it was at that moment I realized I should probably just stick with my Pokemon niche.
Yeah, all hail the algorithm.
Right.
Well, is there anything that you're working on right now that you can talk about?
Sure. There is kind of the project I've been dealing with for the last couple months or so is having to do with the creation of Lugia, because it's a really unique origin story. If I go into the full story, it's going to be kind of dry and boring. Basically, the guy who wrote he was the head writer for the original Pokemon anime and the first 3 movies, Takeshi Shudo. I don't know if you've heard that name.
I actually haven't.
He was a really interesting character. He was basically hooked on alcohol and painkillers. Like he wrote a blog after he'd quit Pokemon. He died in 2010, but for about the 10 years prior to after he left Pokemon, but before he died, he wrote about 225 blog posts in Japanese, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard one particular blog entry from about a year or two before he died. He claimed credit for the creation of Lugia, which would be unusual that a writer for the anime would create a Pokemon, especially a legendary, as opposed to the Game Freak design team.
Yep.
So I commissioned the translation of that blog post, and he said all this stuff about being hooked on booze and pills and some really bizarre, how his doctor wanted him to clean up. Of course, he ended up dying about a year later. But it was really interesting. And then he said something like, as I mentioned once before, you know, I created Lugia. I was like, okay, well, this is absolutely opened a can of worms. Like he's talked about Lugia in the past and painkillers and alcohol. I've ended up basically going through all 225 of his blog posts and Control F, you know, search word the Japanese characters for Lugia, and every paragraph where he'd mentioned Lugia, I commissioned it to be translated, and so I can just find out everything. And basically, he took credit for the creation of Lugia. He did create the concept for the second movie.
Yep.
Because, you know, actually Lugia wasn't in that Space World demo. He actually hadn't been created yet at that point. He was created later for the second movie, and if the games hadn't been delayed, Lugia wouldn't have been in Gen 2, according to him. I think it was actually Ken Sugimori. It was kind of as is often the case, the actual design of Lugia was kind of a team effort from the designers, but Shudo did come up with a concept and some other elements of Lugia, and he became really obsessed with Lugia right before his death. Really strange. Like these translations, he's saying things like, oh, like they gave Lugia a man's voice in the movie that I wrote, and I should have pushed back. I'd always thought of Lugia as more of a maternal figure. And it's really strange. And anyway, yeah, I've been going through all these old blogs, trying to put them all into one comprehensive video without it just being a huge, you know, hour-long mess. And I'm actually kind of teaming up with there's another YouTube kind of Pokemon YouTuber, Lockstin. That's the project I'm currently working on, is the whole Shudo Lugia creation story.
Awesome. And when will that be coming out?
Your guess is as good as mine. Now it's taken longer than I would have liked. Hopefully, I should have been a month ago, but I'll probably be a month from now.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about Beta Pokemon and cut content. Where can people find you?
My YouTube and my Twitter are both the same, Dr. Lava's Lost Pokemon. I've got a website where I publish translations and stuff like that. It's called lavacutcontent.com, LAVA.
And we'll be sure to include links to all that in the episode description. So if you guys are on iTunes or whatever, you should be able to click on that and find it right away.
All right. Thanks for having me, Push.
Thank you. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. We'd like to give a special shout out to the talented chiptune composer Jamatar, who once again allowed us to use his track Midori as opening and closing music. You can find more of his banging beats by searching Jamatar, that's Jamatar, on Spotify, or visiting jamatar.com. If you have any feedback on the podcast, or would like to recommend a topic, feel free to reach out to us via Twitter. We can be found at MemCardShow, or on our website, memorycardshow.com. If for some reason you'd like to follow Ben and I, we can be found at SuperBentendo and PushDustin, respectively. Have you considered supporting Memory Card on Patreon? If not, we hope you will. We're supported by quite a few awesome people, including Jackson Bertoli, Tyler Bias, Cody Sam, Michael Strickland, Tyler Davis, Courtney Cotton, Stuart Radley, Harrison. All of our Patreon information can be found on the support section of our website, or on patreon.com/memcard. We'll be back very soon with some more gaming history goodness, so be sure to subscribe. We'll see you soon.